Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are continuing with the 100 Years of Movie series. This is where this is a rehash of a series I used to have on my channel where I used to talk about the last 100 years of the movies up until that point. So the last time I did this was in 2018, so I started in 1918 at that time. But this year I decided to reach out to my good friends for each decade, so I have a new face and a good new perspective of these different decades that we're talking about. And this time we're talking about the 1980s, which is a incredible decade. And I picked a really wonderful guest, my friend Justin, Rhine1988. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, buddy. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited.
This is exciting because this is one hell of a decade, and I know. Obviously we're in the middle of October when we record this, and this will probably be up not too long after. And the 80s, I'm sure we're going to be talking about this a lot, but I know a lot of people who are a fan of scary movies and horror movies know that the 80s are like the golden era of effects, and a lot of staples are out of this decade. So I'm sure that'll be covered in this a little bit, I'm sure, from both of us. But what about you? What about the 80s do you like, just in general? It doesn't have to be anything about horror necessarily, but like what about the 80s do you like?
Well, outside of movies, because outside of horror movies, movies in general in the 80s for me, they're my go-to ones. Like, I always have a fun time watching 80s comedies. I could watch an 80s drama, thriller, whatever it may be. For me, even though I was born in 1988, but I'm considered kind of like a 90s kid growing up. I always feel like I have an 80s heart. And so I love movies. I love music from the 80s. You'll pretty much hear me listen to a lot of 80s music, rather that be, cleaning the kitchen, washing dishes, or like jamming in my car. So
I love it.
Thank you. I love it. And I think for me, something about the 80s is just kind of uplifting. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just
absolutely.
It's very uplifting. We had a lot of great things come out in the 80s, a lot of music, a lot of movies, and it's just, for me, 80s all the way. I love 90s, I love 70s, I love, present day, 2000s, 60s, but for me, it's the 80s. So
I think I completely get what you mean by that like that. It's almost like the 80s has like some type of magic connected to it. And it's the style and the the design of the clothes. It's the vibe of the entire decade, and I completely get it. And for some reason, to me, it's a very uplifting decade. Just because there's a lot of things that happen in the world that were like, a big deal that happened in the 80s. And honestly, for the most part, obviously, there's no such thing as a not tumultuous decade whatsoever. There's no such thing. But it definitely was a relatively, I feel like, a lot calmer time period than maybe some of the other decades that we've covered so far on this journey. Things were starting to get a little bit more goofy, a little bit more fun and zany, and you can see that in the different types of movies that would come out during this time period. Some experiments were happening. So I'm on board with you on the 80s. And also, I mean, I was an early 90s kid when I was born, so I'm not too far off from when you were born, but I definitely feel like that residual 80s-ness growing up, because a lot of those reruns of a lot of those classic 80s things, like cartoons like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Transformers, for instance, or He-Man, action figures in general, and all those commercials that you would see from the 80s and also in the 90s, you'd see a lot of that stuff. So it definitely, has a special place in my heart too, growing up. And so I love this decade, and I'm super excited to talk to some movies and choose some things with you.
Yeah, me too. I want to mention that, like, I always say, do you remember the movie? You've seen Pretty in Pink, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
So I always feel like sometimes I feel like Annie Potts, who owns the record store,
Yeah.
like, she's like stuck in the 50s or whatever. I feel like that would be me, but in the 80s. Like, I'd be like, you know what? I was born in 88, but I'm an 80s child, and like that would be me. I feel like I would be an Annie Potts working in a movie store or record store and just be stuck in the 80s. I don't know.
I completely get it. As somebody who did work at a record store, and then now as I teach, that's one of my jobs.
Yeah.
I'm constantly showing my students like 90s music. So like, like I'm showing them Massive Attack or Portishead or Bjork or Wu-Tang or something from the 90s or something that like they're like, what is this? But that's always fun because and musically I'm definitely stuck in a certain time period. But yeah, this is going to be fun. So now everyone who is new to this or is returning, what we do is we're going to choose 5 films that we are going to represent as our representatives of this decade. I used to, in the last time I did this, I chose my favorite film from each year. But this time around, for me at least, I want to showcase some maybe lesser known films or maybe films that I wouldn't necessarily would say like this is my absolute favorite, but these are like some of my favorites from this time period. And so that's how I'm going to structure this for myself. But what about you, Justin? What are you going to be doing?
My top 5, I've kind of picked some popular ones, and then I kind of mixed it up and picked some kind of lesser known ones. Not really underrated because I think people have heard of these, but of course, if you've never seen them, you have to watch them. But I went my top 5 by the year, so it's going by the year, and it's a mix of different genres there.
Well, excellent. Well, actually, let's just get into this and let's look at our first choice. What did you choose for your first film?
So I'm kicking off spooky season, guys. If you've never seen this, which I think you have, but if you've never seen it, go ahead and watch it. That's John Carpenter's The Fog. So
on 4K.
Yeah, on 4K, the UK 4K, which by the way, excellent transfer. So highly recommend it. Yeah, I could watch this movie maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and it's a film that never gets old for me. I always go back and forth if this is my second or third favorite John Carpenter movie. Which
big statement.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I think especially during this time of the year when it's like fall, cool weather season, this is one of those perfect movies to watch. And I think it's an eerie movie. I think it's a creepy film. It's very effective. It doesn't rely on a lot of jump scares, I don't think. It's more like subtle scares. But there's some really good practical effects, some great scenes in this movie. And of course, you got John Carpenter's score, which is classic. And the cast. I love the cast. Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Atkins, Janet Leigh, so many others, Hal Holbrook, Nancy Loomis. The cast, or Adrienne Barbeau, I don't want to forget her. Just amazing. So, and it's creepy. Like literally every time I watch this, if I'm watching it by myself in the dark, I always kind of get goosebumps.
Well, you better not have a fog machine in your room or your house.
Thank goodness I don't.
Because it'd give you nightmares.
But yeah, I love The Fog. This is, and again, like if you have never seen it, obviously go ahead and watch it. But if it's like a film that you've never watched in October, but now like this kind of gives you an idea to watch it in October, definitely do so. It has a really good atmosphere.
I definitely recommend it myself, but that's actually one of the few Carpenter films I don't have physically. So I need to, because I watched it years ago, but I don't have it. But I definitely need. I think I might get that UK version because these 4Ks, I've heard so many good things about it from several friends, overseas especially. I haven't heard anything from domestic friends yet, so I'm glad that you have that.
It's a good one. Yeah, if you're wanting to own this for the first time, this is the one to get. And if you don't get this one, the Scream Factory edition is really good too. But collecting a lot of Carpenter films, especially diving into 4K, this is a must.
And they're all regions too for everyone listening.
All regions.
4Ks don't have a region lock anymore. So that's really, really cool. So you can check that out if anyone's interested in that and ordering it yourself. Might pay a little bit for shipping, but that's what we do.
I think I paid $23 for that, so that wasn't bad on Amazon.
That's a good deal. Yeah.
Really good deal. So, but yeah.
Well, you chose a film from 1981, correct?
1980.
When was that?
1980. Sorry.
1980. Oh, okay. Well, we're moving right along to 1981 for me, and we're actually going to shift some gears here a little bit. I'm not talking about a horror movie here.
So it says 1979, but I know it came out in 1980. So I think for some reason it says 1979. I think this is 1980. So
I'm gonna believe it, and people in the comment section are gonna be like, "Bruh, it's 1970, whatever." It's an 80s movie. Yes. So anyway, we're gonna switch gears a little bit here to a 1981 film, and it's one that I've talked about on my channel before, but it's probably been a while since I've talked about it, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's that good that I remember so much from it. And I'm talking about 1981's My Dinner with Andre, and this is with Wallace Shawn and Andre. Why can't I think of his name? I like I said, I always Andre Gregory. I almost said Morel because I was thinking of a UK actor. Andre Gregory and Wallace Shawn. Wallace Shawn is probably the most famous actor. He's in The Princess Bride. He's the inconceivable bald henchman. As we'll probably talk about Princess Bride a little bit later. But anyway, My Dinner with Andre is about two friends. Well, one of the friends is kind of living in New York, and his one friend, his eccentric friend, who's just been traveling, is finally coming in to town, and like just kind of hits him up and is like, "Hey, you want to grab dinner and have a conversation?" And Wallace Shawn's not really wanting to do this, but he's like, "You know what? Why not? Let's just meet up and have a conversation about stuff." And so that really is what this movie is about. It's exactly the title. It is they're having dinner together, and just the way the conversation flows about all sorts of different topics and elements and relationships and life experiences, it goes all over the place, and it's just such a wonderful and lively conversation filled with so much emotion from like I said, ranging from topic to topic, and really hitting the reason why we connect with other people. And that's the reason I like this movie so much, is because it's just so engaging with the dialogue. It's not necessarily the prettiest film ever, but it's definitely one that will make you, sit there and be like, you know what, I want to have more conversations like this. This would be really, really interesting and fascinating to have. And so, I'm very much drawn to these types of films. But have you seen this movie?
I have not, but I'm always looking to get different criterions in my collection, so I'm gonna have to check that one out. So,
well, this one is you can get it by itself. I had the original one by itself, but there's also a box set with both. While Shawn and Andre Gregory have worked together, there's a 3 films box for them, because they're both really heavily into theater, and there's a couple of theater productions that they've done, and so you can tell this is like based on a play. And in a sort of way. So, but yeah, my first pick is My Dinner with Andre. So that's my first choice. Before we jump into, I guess, our second choices, do you have any honorable mentions to talk about?
Yes, I do. So I know we got a stack of them. So how many honorable mentions do we want to talk about for a little bit?
Let's do 3. 3 of them. 3. Yeah.
All right. So, you know what? Carpenter's Halloween came out in 1978, but for me, this is still my favorite. Halloween 2, 1981. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Halloween fan. Obviously, I got the shirt on. I'm a big franchise Halloween fan, and I've seen them all. I love some of them. I enjoy some of them. But you know what? Halloween 2 is still my second favorite of that franchise. I think it's a perfect follow-up after the original, and honestly, it's an amazing double feature. Like, if you watch Halloween and Halloween 2 back to back, it's perfect. It's one big movie, and I know.
Well, I mean, it picks up right as it ended.
Yeah.
Yep.
Afterwards, I think this movie. I think John Carpenter's Halloween is my favorite movie and favorite horror movie. It is. But you know what? I think the scariest, or probably the more eeriest movie out of the two, is Halloween 2. You know, the idea of the setting being a hospital, and you think that's a safe place to be, but then Michael Myers comes there. I mean, that's creepy. And I love the kind of eeriness about it. I'm going to say eerie quite a bit, but it's a very eerie movie. I love the updated score in the film. I love, and I know some people are divided with the whole brother-sister storyline, but I love the reveal that, you know, you have a brother-sister storyline here where Michael and Laurie are brother and sister. And the fact that, like, he is going after her, like, you know, he doesn't stop, like, he's going after her. And then you got great kills. So for me, Halloween 2, I don't want to talk too much about this, but I love this movie. And it kicked off, like, you know, kind of like a sequel thing going on, because before this, you really didn't have a lot of horror movie sequels. And Halloween 2 was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first ones to do it. So I love Halloween 2.
I'm going to dive into, I just watched Halloween on 4K from Scream Factory last night as we're recording this, and I have Halloween 2 in the queue, which I think I may watch after this, depending on how tired I am, but I have it very much ready, so I'm very excited to dive into that. I'm glad you chose that.
Thank you.
Speaking of Carpenter, even though I know he didn't do that film, he didn't direct that one, but he had his fingerprints all over it, you know. Speaking of Carpenter, and I'm sure people are like, what? How did you put this as an honorable mention? Well, it's because I probably have talked about it way too much. And this is my favorite horror movie of all time. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Talking about John Carpenter's The Thing. And this is an honorable mention only because I talk about it too much. I promise. This is a perfect film. And I have this in 3 different versions. I have the 4K right over there. I have the Arrow here. I even have the Scream Factory behind me. And I'm sure if there's ever another release of it, I'm going to pick it up as well, because I just love this movie so damn much. And I haven't really said this on camera yet, but I actually have a 4K projector now. And this was the first film, not this one, but the 4K over there. That was the first movie that I watched on the projector. And so that doesn't tell you how much I love this movie. You know, it's just such a special film with great music, great you know, setting, great atmosphere, and then also such a incredibly scary premise, just in general. And I think it's just one of those films where it's like, you know what, all the pieces are set for something that just is just perfect. So anyway, The Thing, everyone knows this movie. Go watch it. Go watch it a million times. Yeah. What about you? What do you think of The Thing?
Well, you know what? Bam, that was my next honorable mention. So
Sweet.
There we go.
We nailed it.
We did. And I agree. Go watch it. If you've never seen it, or if it's been a long time since you've seen it, or say if you watched it yesterday, but you're like, what movie should I watch again? Go watch it.
Rewatch it.
Go crazy.
It's such a rewatchable film. That's the crazy thing about that movie.
It really is. And a couple other things I love about this, which, by the way, I still have to watch the 4K. I'm really excited to watch it.
It's beautiful.
Oh, so excited. But I love, what Carpenter does so well is create great atmosphere with his movies. And this one has one of the best atmospheres. And I love the setting, like a deserted, snowy setting. Atmosphere, again, I'm all for atmosphere, and I love it in this movie. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, Kurt Russell movie. I think he's great in this. I just bought the latest NECA figure with him, which I'm really happy to have.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, I love this movie. So I agree with everything you said. I have maybe 2 or 3 copies of this movie. And, if they come out with, they have a 4K steelbook. I was to say, if they have a 4K steelbook, I might get it, but they do have that steelbook. But I'll just keep buying this movie. I love The Thing. So.
Me too. Well, I'm glad we both chose that. I
Me
guess
too.
for my second honorable mention, we're going to continue with horror. And this one is not too long after, in 1983. And this is an infamous film that I actually was gifted a few years ago from my buddy Chris, who's been on the channel and also has his own podcast, Inside the Sequel. I highly recommend people check that out on all the podcast apps and stuff, like Spotify. But he gifted me Sleepaway Camp.
Ooh.
And this movie is so crazy and so 80s, and I love it to death because I watched it with my best friend, who is up in Canada right now. If you're watching this, Ben, I love you. But we did not. I'm just gonna say, like, if you haven't seen this movie, watch it with some friends. Just saying that. So, without getting into that, it's such a fun movie. It's so crazy. The dialogue is hilarious because you're like, what are they saying to each other and what is going on with so much of this movie? And it's just one of those WTF movies that is just so iconic. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this right now know about this movie. But I was so glad that I was able to watch this and blind too, didn't know anything about anything. So I was very, very happy about that.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah.
That's a good one. The first time I saw that, I bought the Anchor Bay DVD box set, and I had no idea what these movies were, but I was getting into a lot of slasher films and going outside of like the mainstream horror movies. And like you, I watched it, had a lot of fun with it, and then you get to that ending and my mouth dropped. And I still say it's one of the best endings of any horror movie out there, and one of the best endings for a movie. I love it. And if you've never heard about Sleepaway Camp, I will say this, anybody watching, do not look it up. Just go and buy the movie. Go buy it, go watch it somewhere. Do not try to look up the twist ending. Just go into that movie not knowing anything. Yeah.
What about your final honorable mention?
All right. So again, another great atmospheric movie, and the weather is starting to feel like fall now, and I think this is perfect. And that is the first Evil Dead movie, 1981, which just celebrated a birthday. I love Evil Dead, Sam Raimi's first movie. Who knew he would go on to do like the original Spider-Man trilogy, and Drag Me to Hell.
So perfect.
Yes. But yeah, Evil Dead. It's a low budget film, shot on film, and some people might think it's silly, but I love it. I love the cabin. I love the setting. Again, atmosphere. I talked about it already. Cast is fun. It's when you go and watch documentaries, or if you hear about the making of this movie, it's always fascinating, and it just shows that you can have a low budget for a film, go make it, and you never know, your movie might become a classic staple for a lot of people, and that's what Evil Dead did. So and it's, again, a perfect fall movie, so you got to go watch that one.
Yeah, I love that movie, and honestly, I'm due for a revisit on them, because I mean the time is now for the Necronomicon to be read. So
I know I got to go read it after this. I'm gonna go read the book.
That's what we're gonna do.
See what happens.
See what happens. We'll see. Do you have a basement there?
I do, actually.
Oh, good God, that's scary. I don't have a basement where I'm at right now. Thank goodness. Okay. Shifting gears, and my last and final honorable mention here is a film that's not horror, but is a film from 1984, and is directed by the German director Wim Wenders, and is absolutely one of my favorite films of all time. Another reason I'm not picking it is because it's I talk about it a lot, but I'm talking about Paris, Texas, right here. Paris, Texas is just such an incredibly impactful film. Henry Dean Stanton is just fantastic in this movie, and his performance is this is probably one of the best performances from an actor I've ever seen. And this is just about a guy who walked away from a situation and then kind of came back years later, and is kind of trying to put some pieces together, but in also rebuild his life a little bit more and trying to figure out some things. That's really putting it very loosely for a lot of people. But it is it's a film that is there's not a lot going on in the movie, but it's an incredibly emotional journey, and I highly recommend it. It's definitely probably going to make you feel things, but I think the things that you feel from this movie are incredibly important. And so, but if you haven't seen Paris, Texas, I highly recommend it. It's just one of those things that'll sap you of energy. Have you seen this one?
I've not seen that one. I have not. So again, another criterion I need to add to that list. So I've heard of it though. I've heard it's a great movie. So
yes, but like I said, prepare yourself.
Prepare myself. I definitely will.
Yes.
Definitely will.
All right, so now we talked a little bit about some honorable mentions. Let's jump back into our list. What is your second choice for the 1980s and the 100 Years of Movies?
All right, so I think this is 1981. I'm hoping it's 1981. But anyway, it's like, for me, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, or if you want to just call it Empire Strikes Back, the way it originally was presented. I know people know about this movie, but when I think of the 80s and I think of one of my favorite movies, this one right here. This is my favorite of just the Star Wars saga, the original Star Wars trilogy.
As it is mine as well.
Is it? Oh,
yep,
see, awesome.
My favorite.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. It's my favorite. And it's so great, that it's somewhat rare that a second movie can be better than the first film. And I think this one did it. I love Star Wars. I think that's classic 70s movie.
It's my second favorite.
Your second favorite?
Oh, is Star Wars, yeah.
I have to think about I know I created a list a long time ago. I think it's in my top 4. So maybe Last Jedi. No, I'm just kidding. Last Jedi is my second favorite. No. I do like that though. I do love that movie. I know.
I enjoy it too. I watch all the haters in the comment section.
But Empire Strikes Back, I think I'll redeem myself for saying that I love The Last Jedi. But this one is perfect. I mean, stories, a little bit more there. Not to say that the first movie is not perfect, because I do love it, but I like that they kind of furthered the story. You got to get to know these characters more. And obviously the twist at the end with Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father. I think, when everybody saw this originally in 1981, I believe, 1981, that probably shocked a lot of people. That was probably a big, mouth drop for a lot of people in the cinema. This would be a movie that I've never seen on the big screen, but I would love to see this on the big screen.
I've seen it on the big screen. It's perfect.
Love it. And if I could see the original, theatrical version on the big screen, that would be amazing. So, but this, I love this. I love that movie. So, Empire Strikes Back.
That is, like I was saying, my favorite Star Wars film. And yeah, when I think of the 80s, I definitely think of Star Wars. And yes. Its continuation from that late 70s from the original film, and just obviously got bigger, and and it just kept getting bigger. And that's just one of those iconic movies that, like you said, it's one of those rare things where the sequel has a kind of, in a sense, for a lot of people, I would say, it surpasses the original, which is not a thing that happens. Like, I could think of maybe Godfather being around there, even though that's a debate too, which is better, Godfather or Godfather Part 2, but there's very few films that are like that. So yeah, excellent pick. I love Star Wars, grew up with Star Wars, completely understand. And yes, when are we going to get all those cuts? Give us the original cuts. Gosh dang it.
I know. I'm still waiting. I think we're all waiting for that. So hopefully one day it happens.
Maybe.
I think maybe it will happen. Maybe one day.
Probably not, though. I don't know.
But real quick, nostalgic though, do you remember how they would market Star Wars stuff with Pizza Hut or
Pepsi
products or all that?
KFC.
Another more nostalgic stuff there. So
I have some of the KFC from the episode 1 Phantom Menace from 1999. I have some of those bottleheads things, but
I have the Burger King watches. Like when they came out with the first 6 movies, the Burger King watches, I have them all still in their little container.
I'm sure those are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to pick my second choice now that you picked such an incredible movie. So I'm actually going to go a silly route though, and this is just the standard release on the Blu-ray, but it's actually an incredible film, and I would love to see this reintroduced actually in the Criterion Collection because it used to be on Laserdisc. But also I would like to see just a nice 4K edition of this or whatever. But I'm talking about 1984's This is Spinal Tap. And this is one of the funniest movies of all time. It is a spoof movie, a rockumentary, if you will. And it is about a fictional band. And after this movie came out, it became a real band. But this is about a fictional rock band. It's all sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Mixed with like Monty Python and Naked Gun and a lot of that type of humor, mixed in together. This is directed by Rob Reiner. This is one of his like first films, and Rob Reiner, we'll talk about probably a little bit later. I keep hinting at this, but this is one of his I love this so much because he's in this movie as well. He's like the manager of the band, and he pops in and out of it, and it's really really funny. And people who know me know that like comedy is a huge deal to me. Like I grew up watching Adam Sandler films and watching Monty Python and watching the Three Stooges and eventually now I'm at the point where like I've rewatched like Abbott and Costello and Charlie Chaplin and a lot of those fun classics. So I love humor from all ranges of different things. I even love humor that's going on right now, like Booksmart or something a little bit more contemporary. But these are the things that I love. I love comedy and I love spoof as well. And as somebody who also really loves music and rock music, that I grew up listening to classic rock and hair metal a little bit. This is probably poking more fun towards hair metal, but this is totally an 80s movie. And anytime I think of the 80s, I think of Spinal Tap, and I think of how incredible this movie is. It's just a movie that goes up to 11, if you will. For everyone listening, you seen this one?
I've not seen it, but I've heard of it. I think though Christopher Guest is Christopher Guest? Is he in that one?
Yes, Christopher Guest. Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis's husband. So.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. They're about beautiful people.
I didn't know if you knew that though. Like that was Jamie Lee Curtis's husband was Christopher Guest.
No, I didn't know off the top of my head. Even though everyone in the comment section is gonna be like, "What? How did you not know?" So,
but I'll have to check it out though. That's one I've heard of. So
it's very fun. Very very fun.
I'll have to watch that one.
All right. So now that we chose our second choice, let's dive into a few more honorable mentions. Do you have any ones that you got right in front of you?
I do. So now I might be reversing a second, just a year, because I thought it was 1981. I think it's 1980. Again, spooky season, guys. And some people might think, why is it not in your top 5? But 80s was an amazing decade for movies, so this was hard. But The Shining.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I almost forgot this. I was like, wait a minute, I gotta like switch it out and like put this in here. But yeah, The Shining. Kubrick, classic. I know Stephen King does not like this movie.
Whatever.
You know what? It's probably my favorite Kubrick movie. I think it's my favorite.
It's my favorite Kubrick.
It's my favorite. Again, setting perfect. Eerie, scary movie. Gives me goosebumps every time I watch it. Performances are amazing in this movie. Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall. I always feel so bad for Shelley Duvall, like in the movie and behind the scenes. Like she just went through a lot. But yeah, the movie works. So many decades later, I love The Shining. And again, another great snowy setting type of movie. Yeah, The Shining. So everybody knows about this, but again, if there's somebody out here watching this, if you're watching this, you've never seen The Shining, go watch The Shining. So
Red rum, red rum.
Red rum. Danny's not here, but it's torrent.
I love that movie, and I'm in total agreement with that choice. Just perfect. So go watch it, people. So the next film that I have is a Japanese film from 1985, and it's probably I would say, just objectively, from a lot of people's standpoint, probably this guy's second biggest epic. This is his like last big epic, I would say, that he put out. But I'm talking about Akira Kurosawa, and I'm talking about Ron, and this is on 4K. And this is a Shakespeare adaptation in feudal Japan, and it is about like King Lear. It's adapting Shakespeare's King Lear. But this is from Studio Canal, and this is actually the recent 4K release of this. And this is a Region B release for people wanting this. There actually is a Blu-ray out as well if you want to get it. But I highly recommend this movie. It's an epic. Let's see how long it is. It is 161 minutes, so it's almost 3 hours long. But it is an incredible tale. And if you, of course, if you know King Lear, obviously an older king is losing his grip, and his sons are vying for that power. And that's really kind of the heart of this story. But it is just an incredibly lush and beautiful film that is choreographed very well. The performances are just insane. This is probably, I always talk about Seven Samurai, and I also talk about Rashomon. Those are two of my favorite Kurosawa films. Ron is right there with those. So those are my three favorite Kurosawa films of all time. And this one is no exception. Tatsuya Nakadai is in it, who is an incredible Japanese actor. We also have Hidoro Akira, Reed Jimpachi, Nezu Daisuke, Ryu Mako, Harada Yoshiko, Miyazaki Peter. I probably messed up all those names, but except for Tatsuya Nakadai, because I know that actor, and he plays our main king, and so it's just an incredibly fantastic film. And if you haven't seen any of Kurosawa's films, what are you doing? Watch his movies. They're incredible movies, incredible samurai, films that are really lush in the human emotion. So anyway, this is an incredible movie. I haven't seen the 4K of this yet, but I'm super excited to, and I'm very excited for it. So
awesome, buddy. So is this our second honorable mention? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is, people know about it, but it came out the same day that The Thing was released in theaters, and did not do well when it came out, but over time it's become a favorite for a lot of people, and that is Blade Runner. So 1981. Yeah. And by the way, it's like, just found this 5-film set right here. I got the 4K too. I have to show them both off.
I need to get that 4K. Dang it, I need to get that 4K. Beautiful. I know, I've heard so many good things.
Oh, beautiful. But I'm gonna hold up the very nice. There you go. I love it. Blade Runner. Again, this is a movie, when it came out, did not do well. Wasn't well received by critics. If I remember, critics were not too kind with this movie. And then, of course, over the years, we've had so many different cuts of the film. You had the theatrical cut, which I've still yet to see. I know it's in here, so I want to watch it. Next time I revisit Blade Runner, I'm going to watch that.
I've seen all the cuts. There's like 5.
There's 5 of them? Oh, wow. Yeah. That's crazy to think. 5 cuts of a movie. But yeah, so... but now we, leading up, we have the director's cut, we have the work print, I think, and then the final cut of the movie. So, if you've never seen Blade Runner, again, these are any of these movies that we talk about, you have to watch them. But Blade Runner, from the visuals to the directing to the cast, Blade Runner, in my opinion,
to the score as well,
score,
by Tangerine Dream.
Tangerine Dream. I love that. Is
Mhm.
you talk 80s, Tangerine Dream. I love them. But yeah, Blade Runner though. Score, setting, casting, acting, all of it. And yeah, every time I watch the movie, you always get, especially the final cut, or yeah, the final version of the film.
The best
I
version.
always
That is the one to watch
the
for
best
sure.
one.
Yeah.
But I always love where you're having to think about it, and you're thinking, is so and so, and I'm not going to say who if no one's ever seen it, but are they who they're supposed to be? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then the movie goes off, and then you talk about Tangerine Dream, and my favorite score by Tangerine Dream. The best song comes up at the end of the movie, and yeah, I can listen to that song just by itself on YouTube any time of the day, and it gets me in the mood to watch Blade Runner. So I love it.
I love it, and I'm sure that fun fact for everybody. That's not the last time we're going to talk about Blade Runner in the future. If we're gonna in a couple videos.
There you go.
So that's an incredible pick, and I love Blade Runner, and I love its sequel as well. But that's all I'll say about
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
So from my second choice is another film from 1985. It's another film that is about a Japanese. It's about a Japanese man, but it's directed by Paul Schrader, who did Taxi Driver for a lot of people who know him from that. But I'm talking about Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, right here. And this is an incredibly intense and beautiful film about really just diving into Mishima, this actual person who lived, this general who had different aspects of his life, where eventually he killed himself in a public way, and was just really insane thing that happened. And so Paul Schrader made a movie kind of just based on a lot of that, those real life events, and it is just gorgeous. It is a movie, like I said, that it talks a lot about a lot of different emotions, from love to heartbreak, and just failing to do a job. And that's where that failure comes in and really tricks with a lot of people, and where not accepting that failure can result into some things. And so that's kind of what this movie is a little bit about. And I'm probably not selling it enough, but it is just a movie that I highly, highly recommend. And Paul Schrader is an incredible director. And this is definitely, this and Taxi Driver are like the ones that I always recommend for his films. That, and now I guess First Reformed with Ethan Hawke, which we'll maybe talk about a little bit later down the road. But yeah, Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters, beautiful Criterion release. It's all nice and shiny. Yeah.
Hey, I'm always sold with something shiny, so I'm gonna have to check that one out. So.
Yes, watch the movie, everyone.
I'm
it's all nice and shiny. All right, what about your final pick?
All right, so I'm going a little bit lighthearted. I think I've talked a lot of spooky sci-fi stuff, so I'm actually going with an 80s movie, 80s comedy. 80s movie. We're talking 80s movies. 80s comedy, and one of the best teen high school movies. And I'm not talking Breakfast Club. That's not really a comedy, but I'm talking Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So
yeah,
love Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Did you order a pizza?
I did not. I wish. I wish.
In class. You ever know?
I know. Ordering
class.
a pizza, eating some food. So makes you want a pizza now. Like for me, I'm like, okay, now I want a pizza. One of my favorite moments, by the way, in the movie is that scene there. But yeah, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. When you think of high school or young adult teen movies, this is one of my favorites. Got a mix of different kind of subgenres in here. You got like comedy, you got drama in here. But yeah, I love this. Cameron Crowe wrote the script. Amy Heckerling, hopefully I'm saying her name right. She went on to direct one of my favorite films in the 90s, and that is Clueless. But yeah, Fast Times at whatever.
Not Mike.
Rolling with the homies. So, but Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Yeah.
I love it.
One of the best. One of the best. One of the best movies.
That is a great hangout movie for sure.
It really is. And you want a pizza every time you watch it. So.
In class, I mean, I teach. If somebody does that in my class, you know what? I'm not going to be mad.
No, be like,
so, they got to share though.
They have to share.
Speaking of comedies, I decided to go a comedy route too for my last honorable mention, and this is, let's see, this might be the last time I'm talking about him. Okay, finally, we've talked a lot about John Carpenter, and you probably know where I'm going here if I'm talking comedy, especially. This is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, and I also watched this blind when I first saw this movie. And we talked a little bit about Kurt Russell earlier when we talked about The Thing, but I want to talk about Big Trouble in Little China, which is such an insane movie on so many levels, and is just such an awesome combination of so many different things. With like, you know, a lot of the martial arts films that would come out of Hong Kong and stuff in the 70s, and you know, they would tap into that in the 80s here, over the top in a way, and with a lot of insane dialogue, especially coming from Kurt Russell, Jack Burton here, and just you know, saying one-liner after one-liner in these ridiculous situations where it's like almost you know, this would be like a precursor to stuff like that Mortal Kombat would try to do with like Raiden. That's a good example of like this one of these super warriors that is having this supernatural power. It's like this weird combination of all these different things. But if you haven't seen this movie, this is a trip of a movie, and it's so much fun. It definitely couldn't be made today, that's for sure.
No.
But regardless of that, it is just one of the most fun films I've ever seen in my life. And I was luckily able to see this in the theaters at a screening at my Alma Draft House locally a few years back, and it was a party. And so it was, we all got like little, you know, knickknacks. Like we got like a toy gun. Anytime there was gun,
wow,
any gun shooting on the screen, we could pop the cap guns. You know,
I love that.
Yeah, I know. So it's just those kind of little things. Those are always a lot of fun. So Big Trouble in Little China, highly recommend. Another John Carpenter film. John Carpenter is just one of those best directors. You know, you cannot talk about him, right?
I know, he's my favorite director of all time. So I love him. That movie is amazing. Exactly. That movie's amazing. I love that. So.
All right. So I guess now we're moving on to our third choice for our 100 years of movies for the 80s. What is yours?
All right. So another director, not his first movie. He did Piranha 2: The Spawning before this. But I'm talking James Cameron, The Terminator. So, yeah, I love Terminator 2 so much, but this is my favorite of his two Terminator movies he directed. I think everybody knows Terminator, but it's an amazing movie. Where to start with this film? One, Cameron does a great job with this. Again, we talk about kind of lower budget movies, or just kind of a low budget film. Cameron was able to do a lot with the budget that he had with this movie, and it still holds up today. The score in the movie, absolutely love it. Brad Fiedel, one of my favorite composers out there for film, which we'll be talking about another Brad Fiedel Terminator. I love that digibook. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. But Brad Fiedel's music in this is wonderful. You know, and then of course Arnold and the suspense and the slasher subgenre kind of mixed in there, I love. But the thing that really stands out for me the most every time I watch this is the relationship between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. One of the best love stories on screen. I'm not gonna lie, I always get choked up when you have the scene where they are in the motel and he says to Sarah, you know, I came across time for you. And you get that beautiful music. Yeah, my favorite thing about this is that love story between them, the chemistry that they have. Again, you have a mix of different subgenres in there. And who knew that a love story could be in the Terminator, and it works really well. I love this. So Terminator for me, and then the iconic score, you gotta love it. So yeah, Terminator, and it's very suspenseful. It's a mix of a slasher film in there. There's some slasher subgenres in there. So I love the Terminator.
I mean, I feel like there's like it's a mix between, it's obviously an action film, but it also has some horror and sci-fi elements to it, and romance. So it's all those things combined, and I think James Cameron does a phenomenal job with that movie, and obviously he did a phenomenal job. Once again, we talking about sequels. I know that's in the 90s, kind of, right, in 1990.
Yeah, Terminator 1991.
Yeah, Terminator 2, another sequel that is like one of the few times where it's like it's on par, if not better, than the original, according to whoever you're talking to. But it's one of those examples.
Yeah.
But those first two movies, though, are just incredible.
Amazing.
So I love that pick.
Thank you.
Now mine is not as exciting. Let's just say this, but this would be a good precursor, because obviously we're in the middle of October. But I recommend this almost every single time, in the States at least, during the Thanksgiving time, for people. And even if you're outside the States right now watching this, this would be a good November movie regardless. And this movie is actually not set in the United States. Fun fact. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out where it's in 19th century Denmark, but it is in several different languages. It's in Danish, French, and Swedish, with English subtitles. It's from 1987, which I'll bring 1987 up in a bit. But I definitely wanted to choose this one as the one I wanted to tout. But I'm talking about Babette's Feast. And this is really, I mean, exactly what it says. It is really a story about food. And sharing that communal aspect of company with familiar faces and people that you don't know necessarily too much. And there's also a nice little backstory with some flashbacks in this movie as well, just kind of covering the ground for the people in Babette's life. And she's really hosting this dinner and being very, very generous to the people around her. And it's just such a heartwarming film. And I love it so much that it is one of those films that I like to watch, like I said, in the kind of November time period, because it reminds me of that holiday of Thanksgiving. So if anyone hasn't seen Babette's Feast, I highly recommend it. Like I said, it's a 19th century Denmark film. It's just a celebration of food and good company. And it'll make you hungry, and you'll probably want to eat alongside everyone at this feast, at this dinner. I think you would have a really good time. I've talked about 2 dinner films. I just realized that. I talked about my dinner with Andre, and now Babette's Feast. So clearly I'm hungry or something.
We talked about pizza with Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So.
It's all that. It's all coming back.
It is.
Now I guess we can transition to a few more honorable mentions. What do you got?
All right, going back to the spooky season. So I don't think when you think about the 80s, this is a movie that just pops in my head, and I think for a lot of people, and it was groundbreaking for a slasher movie, and that is A Nightmare on Elm Street. So again, another film. It's more of a lower budget movie, but it holds up so well today, and what they were able to do is amazing. I mean, I think a lot of people have seen it, but like the iconic Tina death scene, and kind of being pulled up the ceiling and all around the room. I mean, when you hear how they did that, is amazing. But it's still scary today.
Yes, yeah, it is.
I'm not gonna lie. So my first horror movie I saw was A Nightmare on Elm Street, but I was not supposed to watch it. I was sitting behind the couch as a 5-year-old, and my older sister's friend brought over A Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2, and I could not move. I felt frozen. I was afraid that like Freddy was gonna get me if I moved. Yeah, and it took me a long time to finally revisit this movie, but it's one of my favorites now. And again, Wes Craven, rest in peace. He's one of my other favorite directors. and this is his best. Well, my favorite Wes Craven movie is Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but this is my second favorite one. I love A Nightmare on Elm Street. Again, the effects are amazing. The scares are still there. Robert Englund is iconic as Freddy Krueger. Heather Langenkamp, she's a great final girl.
Johnny Depp's in it.
Johnny Depp's in it. You know, that crop top that he has going on.
Yeah, bring that back, everyone.
Bring that back.
I know that I know 90s fashion's coming back, but go back a little bit more. Bring that back.
I might, you know, for Halloween, just sport the good old crop top for this for the Halloween season. There you go. But A Nightmare on Elm Street, classic.
I'm gonna let you continue with your picks because I actually have a bunch to talk about because 1987 in particular. So I'm gonna let you keep continuing with your honorable mentions.
So I think this is 1985. Yeah, 1985, and I think I talked about it not too long ago. The Breakfast Club. So you talk about 80s movies, you gotta talk about this one. You gotta own it in your collection. You gotta see it, whatever it may be. The Breakfast Club is without a doubt one of the best. And I said that Fast Times is more like a teen comedy. This is definitely more. It has comedy in it, but there's a lot of other stuff there. More of a drama. The cast, in my opinion, one of the best ensemble casts in a movie. And John Hughes, you know, there's going to be another John Hughes movie I'm going to talk about, but
I'm glad we're talking about Hughes.
But John Hughes, I mean, he really knew how to write young adults, teens, and it shows in the movies that he makes or the movies he directed. And The Breakfast Club is definitely one of the best ones out there. Great soundtrack, great moments throughout the film, a lot of great lines in the movie. But yeah, The Breakfast Club, absolutely love it.
That's all I have to say.
There you go. Yes, there you go. And my last, the last honorable mention right now is a little lesser known movie out there. Again, another teen, young youth drama this time. And all I'm going to say is Fair is Fair. You might know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, The Legend of Billie Jean. So one of those movies that, you know, growing up, you know, you had the VHS tapes where you had like 3 movies recorded on a tape. And I remember, I remember we had one of those tapes. And I was watching a film, and it just so happens that the next one was Legend of Billie Jean. And it's a movie, ever since I first saw it as a kid, it stuck with me. It's a perfect summer movie. It has that summer heat there. You definitely feel it. But yeah, I love this. I think out of the films that I talked about from the 80s, this is probably the lesser known one. And over time, it's grown to be kind of this cult favorite. And if you've never seen Legend of Billie Jean, it's again a young youth teen drama. It's about Billie Jean right here on the cover. She's wanting to get money for a scooter bike. I think it's a scooter bike that her brother had that a teen bully kind of tore up, and she gets so hard to say, but she almost gets attacked, or she does get attacked by the father of this young teen guy, and they are then accused of robbing and almost or shooting that owner. And so they pretty much go on the run, and they're having to get people to believe that they are not these teen criminals that people are making them out to be. And Billie Jean becomes this kind of hero to a lot of people. I love this movie. I know, again, it has kind of a cult following, but if you've never seen it, check it out. Pat Benatar has one of my favorite songs in this movie, Invincible. And you have a young Christian Slater in this movie, and Helen Slater is the lead. So But yeah, Legend of Billie Jean.
I have not seen that, so I'm glad that you brought that up. So
Yeah,
that's one to add.
fair is fair. That's all I'll say.
Fair is fair.
There you
We
go.
can do that.
You have to see it.
So these next, I'm actually going to talk about 5 films. So I'm going to do this really fast because, more or less, I highlighted that 1987, and I've mentioned this before on my channel. It is my favorite year of films. There's just so many movies to talk about from this year that I love. That is really hard for me to be like, this is like the best ones, but I have a few here, and I want to mention a few of them, just to name a few, besides Babette's Feast, which is like, my kind of my dark horse of the choices that I have here. But I know I was talking about it earlier, but of course I have to bring up The Princess Bride, which is a perfect film, and is a film that I rewatch every year and multiple times, and I can never stop watching this movie. It's delightful. It's literally every single genre you can think of combined into one movie, all kind of wrapped up in a comedy in a way, and it's beautiful. And so if you haven't seen this, you should, because it's a wish, and it's something that something I'm trying to make it clever to where I can say "as you wish."
As you wish.
Another.
That was a great one.
It's a beautiful film. Another Rob Reiner, like you said. Another film from 1987, and this is actually a Coen Brothers film, and I think it might be the first time we've talked about the Coen Brothers, but it's one of the earlier ones. This one has Holly Hunter in it and Nick Cage, and also has Turturro and also John Goodman as well. I don't know if it has Turturro. Maybe I'm making that up. I am making that up. That's wrong. Cut this part. But anyway, talking about Raising Arizona. And this is just one of my favorite Coen Brothers films with Nick Cage as the lead, really about Nathan Jr. And taking this baby who's not theirs, and just hijinks ensues. And there's one scene in particular with John Goodman escaping from a prison that is something you won't ever forget if you ever watch it. And it is just the funniest looking thing you ever imagine. And if anyone's watching this right now and are familiar with popcorn ceilings, with bumpy ceilings on, I live in a house that has popcorn ceilings. If you know what popcorn ceilings are, and you watch Raising Arizona, you're going to be like, I don't ever want to touch that popcorn ceiling like what happens in this. Just an FYI for everybody there.
Love it. Love that movie.
It's so much fun.
It is.
Another 80s film, 1987 film, that is just like, I cannot believe that it took me until I think earlier last year to see this for the first time. But ever since, I've seen it 3 times now. That's how much I love it, and I cannot believe I hadn't seen it. But I'm talking about RoboCop, and yeah, this movie is just insanely over the top. But obviously has a political message attached to it, but also just such a fun film, but also a film that is like has a lot of heart to it as well. And it's just one of those films that, like, the action, the stop motion animation that exists in this movie, the practical effects, the insanity of the overtopness, the overabundance of consumerism and stuff. It's all right there, and it's so much fun. It's such a wild movie. I actually one of those people who had not seen this movie, but I also haven't seen the sequel or the TV series. I know, everyone, I know. But I love RoboCop, and 1987 is another example of why I love this year.
Paul Verhoeven too.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes.
And then I know you just mentioned this. You brought up the first one, so I have to bring up the second one. Evil Dead 2 is just so much fun. It is just it's almost like it's a rehash of the first movie, but then they have this really insane comedic side to it, where there's like, you know what, we're just gonna go balls to the wall insanity with this movie, and with Ash and everybody involved, and it is just so much fun. It is definitely a different tone. But it feels so natural, and it doesn't mess up with anything, and it is an insane movie. It's just there's so much gore and there's so many crazy things that happen in this. And like you said, the budget too is like this. I mean, they didn't have much of a budget in this one either.
No,
you know?
no,
and
they did not.
they had to get creative. Obviously, they had more money, but they didn't have the most insane money in the world. But Evil Dead, all the Evil Dead movies are just so much fun. Even like the remake and even Ash vs. Evil Dead, the show.
Yeah.
They're fun stuff, and these are fun movies, and you should check it out if you haven't.
Talk about amazing practical effects in a movie. That one, I love a lot of the stuff. Henrietta, you got Henrietta in the cellar. Henrietta. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, we just talked about sequels again being better than the original. Some would argue that is better than the original. And
always go weird. Back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. It's another example of that. And like this decade is ripe with those types of examples, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And the last film I'll mention from 1987 is one that I'll just have to make this noise. Predator.
Ooh.
So
I forgot that one.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah, the voice, the little click.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, Predator is
awesome.
just literally the perfect mashup of an action movie that turns into a horror movie. And it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, you got Jesse Ventura, you got director Shane Black, who is also in this movie. Carl Weathers. This movie is just chock full of testosterone that gets cut short in halfway through the movie. And all these almost invincible people are getting tracked down by one of the most infamous, alien creatures to exist, and the Predator. And this is just such a perfect film for me. I watch this annually, and I love it to death. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. This and The Princess Bride are probably the two from 1987 that I love the most. The ones I visit the most. And so Predator is just such a fun film. And if you haven't seen it, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, go watch this movie. So that's my love for 1987. I had to share that because 1987 is just such an important year for me. And there's so many other movies like Adventures in Babysitting that I'm not talking about.
I love that one.
There's a lot of fun comedies in that realm. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and they're all over the place. 87 is just so chock full of movies that I love.
I love 1987 and Adventures in Babysitting, another great one. That one I love.
Monster Squad, another Shane Black movie. Lethal Weapon.
Yes. Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, it's just there's way too many good movies in 87, and I can't gush about it enough.
1987 again, 80s movies. You just love them.
So. Yeah. So now we're on to our fourth pick. What do you have for us?
All right, so this is top 3 favorite movies of all time for me. Fright Night.
Ooh, yeah, and you have the Twilight Time version too.
I do. Yes, nice. I do. Fright Night. This is my favorite vampire movie of all time. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite horror movies. Again, it's a vampire film, but there's so many different subgenres in this movie. When it comes down to it, it's a love story. You would not think that a vampire film. I know there's vampire films out there that have love stories in them. I think this is the best one though, and it works really well. You also have a villain in this, Jerry Dandridge, played by Chris Sarandon, who isn't. He's not the good guy in this movie, but there are times you sympathize with him. That's crazy to think that, but you do. He's not your typical villain. He tries to give people choices, tries to give people's chances. He falls in love with the female character in this movie, Amy, because Amy reminds him of a long lost love that he used to have. So you have that love story. You have Chris Sarandon as the main villain, one of the main characters. Roddy McDowall, Peter Vincent, he's just amazing as well in this. William Ragsdale is Charlie Brewster. He's that teen, young, youth living next door to a vampire, and at first no one believes him. And then you have Amy in the movie. You have Evil Ed. Yeah, the cast is perfect. Love the soundtrack. This is the soundtrack that I own, and I listen to it quite a bit. Another movie with amazing practical effects that when you first see the film, it will surprise you. So if you don't know anything about Fright Night, go into this movie not knowing anything, because there's some really great practical effects in this.
Oh yeah.
And it's a film that I can quote quite a bit. Like, I am one that if I love a movie and I've seen it over and over, I will quote it. And Fright Night is one of those. And sometimes people are like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Talking Fright Night." Yeah, I just love this. This is, again, it has so many different genres in this. It's a horror movie. There's some comedy in there. There's a love story in this movie. But yeah, Fright Night. If no one's ever seen this, go buy this movie. Go get it. This is out of print, but there's a Blu-ray. So.
There's a Blu-ray. I have it across the bay. I have the normal version. You can go buy it, everyone. Man, the main villain is just so suave. Like our nice neighbor who just he just really cares about everyone, and maybe your mom. So,
yeah. So. I mean, my favorite line is, "Welcome to Fright Night, for real." So, yeah,
it's an amazing movie, and I'm glad that I have a copy, because it's just it's something to sink your fangs into.
Yes, it is.
Now we're moving on to a film from 1988, and this is actually another Japanese film, but this is the film that I think there's two versions of this, but I have the Japanese one here. It's been a bit since I've seen this, everyone. But it is a film that you won't forget. It's not a film that you put on annually. It's not a movie that you'd want to watch all the time, but it is incredibly important and is one of the best animated films of all time. And I'm talking about Grave of the Fireflies from 1988. And this is an incredibly tragic and sad film. It is about these two kids, and obviously this is right at the end of World War II, when the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, and so it's the after effects of that, and these kids who had lost everything about them, and they're trying to just survive the situation and what happens after the fact. It is just an incredibly emotionally draining movie. It's a film that is highly unforgettable, and the animation is impeccable. This is made by the same studio as in Studio Ghibli, so everyone who watches My Neighbor Totoro, or Princess Mononoke, or Ponyo, those are all made by people who have worked in that studio. This is actually directed by the co-founder with Hayao Miyazaki, but this is Iso Takahata. I hope I said his name correctly. Iso Takahata. And it is just one of the most emotional films I've ever seen in my life. But it is such an incredibly powerful film. And if you're not crying by the end of it, I don't know what if you don't have a heart or not. But it's really important. And also, this is one of those films that I feel like would go really, really well into something like the Criterion Collection, or deserves like its own special, outside of a lot of the Japanese animation that exists, even though there's a lot of incredible works. Grave of the Fireflies is definitely one of those ones that is like a very contemporary, like almost like a must watch. So I highly recommend Grave of the Fireflies if you haven't seen this movie, everyone.
I'll have to look that one up. By the way, I forgot to mention, and if I've been missing a year, I apologize. Fright Night was 1985, so 1985.
It's a great year.
It was a great year. That's right.
All right. So before we move into our final choice, do you have any honorable mentions left?
I do. I have 4 of those. So I think we've already talked about this one. So Two Awesome Minds, again, think alike. Another Carpenter movie. Big Trouble in Little China.
There it is.
Yay. Yeah. You made some great points. You talked about some great things. Love the cast in this. Again, another film that has so many different genres in the movie, and it works. So silly. So silly. Yes. Kurt Russell in this movie, he's just a guy who is a truck driver and stops just for probably like maybe a couple hours, just like trying to relax, enjoy things, and gets kind of tied up in this crazy
otherworldly martial art
movie. Yes,
thing.
Creatures and all that.
Triad.
Yeah. I don't know, like for me as a kid, every time I would watch a movie and there was something about it that I loved, I used to reenact it. So Big Trouble in Little China, there would be those moments I would like reenact as a kid. Kim Cattrall, one of her first movies, not her first, but one of her first movies before, Sex and the City and all that. She's great in this. The villain's great. But yeah, this is a fun Carpenter movie, and I don't think for a while it had a lot of love, and I think now more people are loving it and appreciating the movie. So, but yeah, Big Trouble in Little China. I know you said you saw this on the big screen. Pretty jealous with that. I would love to have seen this on the big screen. So
it was beautiful. It's wonderful.
Speaking of movies and a franchise, I know I might get a little. I don't think I'll get hate, but I think people will be like, oh, Justin, you like this over the original movie? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Rocky IV. So
Rocky IV is so much fun.
Rocky IV is, I agree, so much fun. I love the original Rocky. It is my close second favorite, but I think if I want to turn on just a Rocky movie, just kind of randomly, Rocky IV is that movie. My favorite villain in the franchise.
Ivan Drago.
Yes, I will break you or I will crush you. If he dies, he dies. Yeah, and we talk 80s. We're talking 80s right now. And when you think 80s, this movie is just 80s.
Music, montage, yeah. Music, action.
Exactly. The robot in the movie, 80s right there. Mm-hmm. My favorite soundtrack, one of my favorite soundtracks.
Soundtrack is incredible.
Yes, it is. And when I'm working out, this is one of those soundtracks I will put on and just start working out with. I'm envisioning myself as Rocky as I'm working out. Yes, but Rocky IV, I love that movie. Yeah, that's my favorite one, and that's a franchise. You go into November. I will watch the Rocky movies.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense with the New England weather too. So like, yeah, and also it could be almost like a Christmas movie too, because there is some like snowy things too. So nice transition.
Right. And now we're going into something more lighthearted comedy. Big, Tom Hanks. So Jimmy Cocoa Puff. I can't say the whole the song, but Jimmy Cocoa Puff. Love the song. Big is just a delight. It's one of my favorite Tom Hanks movies, and I know it doesn't take place in November. I don't think it does, but for some reason it gets me in the November mood. Like I will put this movie on in November and watch it. And I try to watch it every year. It just, if you're wanting just a kind of lighthearted, fun movie, Big is one of those movies. It's iconic in my opinion. I love Big. So good old Tom Hanks movie right there.
Yes, yeah, that's a fun movie.
That is a fun movie. And then my last honorable mention, we're talking spooky movies and we're talking Halloween season in 1988. So Big was 1988. This is another 1988 movie, Beetlejuice.
Okay, you only have 2 more times you can say that, or 1 more time. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. But yeah, this movie here, might be my favorite Tim Burton movie. It's definitely one of his best.
It's definitely one of his best for sure.
I love it. Cast is amazing in this. Songs are great. Iconic moments in the film. You talk about another movie when I was a kid.
That scared me.
You what?
There's parts that scared me in that movie as a kid.
There's some the snake in the movie. Still kind of creepy when you watch it.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Michael Keaton. I love him. And this is like pre-Batman. So like the next year he would do Batman. Winona Ryder, Gina Davis, Alec Baldwin, Catherine O'Hara, so many greats. And then again, as a kid, I would reenact certain moments in the film. The famous dinner table scene, I would, I was one trying to reenact it. Yeah, I love Beetlejuice. So that is my last honorable mention. 1988, the year I was born. So
Lion sleeps tonight. Just I have the song in my head now. Thanks. Thank you.
Hey yo, hey yo. I love it.
Okay, so for my final honorable mention, it is a staple for my Christmas viewing, and I have to watch it every Christmas. And yes, this is a Christmas movie, so shut up for everybody who doesn't think that's not the case. This is from 1988. This is one of my favorite action movies of all time. I'm talking about Die Hard. And I'm talking about this amazing film with Hans Gruber, aka R.I.P. Alan Rickman. I miss you. And then we also have Bruce Willis, who is our main protagonist here, who is he's just trying to catch a break. He's just trying to get his wife back, and then he just happened to be in this Nakatomi Plaza where there's this this nice little party going on, and then all of a sudden there's some hijackers coming. And some German hijackers, and they are trying to just get some money, and there's got to be some guns that happen, and there's going to be some holiday cheer spread across the whole entire town, mostly in this plaza. But regardless, though, this is such a fun film, and it is a highly rewatchable movie. It is a great action movie. There's a lot of really great one-liners in this movie as well. It's comedic. There are really lighthearted moments, and there's a romance too, of course, with this movie. So it really is just one of those films that I'm like, it's definitely one of my favorite movies to watch over and over and over again annually. And I honestly I feel like this is the first 4 films right here, this 25th anniversary collection. I have seen the first one like so many more times than I have the other ones, and I don't mean to. I just love that first one so damn much that I can't not watch it. So the other discs in this collection, I'm sorry guys, but I haven't seen you in a long time. But the other ones, like, I see every year. So, but yeah, I love Die Hard so much, and honestly, I'm gonna watch it in Christmas time once again.
Hey, and I think it's a Christmas movie too, so I'm with you on that. That is one of the best Christmas movies.
Got a machine gun.
My favorite moment in the film is because he's this guy who's coming in to see his wife and trying to make things work, and she invites him to a Christmas party, and I love the line where he's like, I think he's in the air filter, and he says, what's he say? He's like, oh, come to town. Enjoy
You're gonna have
party.
a good time. Yeah, you're gonna have a good time.
But that is like one of the best. I love that movie so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're to our final choice. What is your final pick for the 1980s?
All right, so if anybody knows me, this is top 3 favorite movies. So I talked about Fright Night being in that top 3. Halloween came out in 1978. That is my favorite movie and favorite horror movie of all time.
Wow, we're talking all 3.
Yeah. So, and this is in a pack with a lot of great John Hughes movies in here, but I'm talking about Some Kind of Wonderful. 1987, I believe, and
87.
Oh, 1987. So, a great year for movies. Great year for movies. A lot of amazing things came out that year. But I was talking about Breakfast Club and how John Hughes was able to he knew how to write young youth and teens and just made it work. And a lot of them are just some of my favorite films. And Some Kind of Wonderful, I will always say this and it will stay the same. It is my favorite John Hughes movie of all time. And it's not directed by him. It's actually directed by another director. And it's the same director who did Pretty in Pink. So John Hughes wrote these movies. This director, Howard Dutch, I believe, directed the film. And it's got some of my favorite characters in a movie, some of my favorite actors and actresses, favorite lines again in a film. You know, you break his heart, I'll break your face. It's about teen love. It's a love triangle here. And you know, you have Eric Stoltz. He's our lead guy in the film. He's the other guy on the other side of the tracks. He's pretty much the Molly Ringwald from Pretty in Pink. He loves this girl named Amanda Jones, played by the amazing Leah Thompson, and really wants her to notice him, and is really in love with her. And then you have Mary Stuart Matherson, who plays Swartz, I believe, in the movie. I can't believe I'm forgetting the character's name, but Mary Stuart Matherson. She's my favorite character in the film, and she's in love with her best friend, who is Eric Stoltz. And again, she wants him to notice her in not only a friendship, but not really just that they have the friendship, but she loves him and wants to be with him. And again, it's a love triangle. It's a teen drama. It's a teen comedy. Again, I can quote this movie so many times. I love Some Kind of Wonderful. So, and the ending, it might bring a tear to your eye. So when you watch it, so it's not sad tears, it's happy tears. But I don't want to give it away if no one's ever seen Some Kind of Wonderful.
I think we've talked about this before, and when we did our film journey, but I still have not seen that movie. And I know, I need to. I know, everybody.
It's a good one.
It's your favorite. I got to. Your second, or one in your top three, right?
In my top three. Yeah. It's so funny. Like my top three: Carpenter's Halloween, Some Kind of Wonderful is my second favorite, and then Fright Night. So that's like a weird combo of things. But
it's a cool combo. I like it.
I love it.
All right, to transition, I'm glad we were able to talk about John Hughes some, because those are a lot of fun and highly rewatchable movies too.
Yes.
But we're actually going to talk about a movie that's actually a lot more serious, because I think a lot of the movies that we kind of covered were in this vein of fun, I suppose, or excess, or like if we talked about like stuff like RoboCop or things like that, where over the top, like Evil Dead or whatnot. But this movie is hitting at something that was going on, and it's still going on today, unfortunately. But it was really poignant at this time period, and this was like a precursor to what would happen, unfortunately, in the 90s in LA in particular. But I'm actually talking about a Spike Lee joint, Do the Right Thing. And Do the Right Thing is just, this is a film that you can feel the heat, like literally dripping off of everybody on this street corner. And this is just such a fantastic film from '89. So this is from 1989 in Brooklyn, in a neighborhood. And Spike Lee is even a character in this movie. And he directs this in an incredible fashion. And it really is about this really hot summer that's happening, and everyone's just outside, like air conditioning's not really working. Everyone's fanning themselves. And it's really about this race relations that occurs in this neighborhood pizza shop that are owned by a bunch of Italian immigrants, Italian Americans that were there, Saul's Pizzeria. And we have one of our main characters in here who works there, just doing, means ends. And it kind of just boils up to this point where there's some egregious kind of racial tensions that occur throughout the film, and it just builds up to this thing, and it's a really, really powerful and impactful film, with incredible music, incredible performances, and a really powerful message as well. And I know I mentioned earlier in the video that I said, like, the 80s, for a time period weren't as bad as some other time periods. And that's not always true. And that's not always true for, people in different races or different preferences. There's a lot of actual things that happened during this time period that were not okay. And the thing is, it's important to talk about those things. And I think Do the Right Thing is as sharp as ever, and is even sharper now because of what's going on in our country. In the States, at least, if you're watching this and you're a part of the States, you understand this a little bit, but about race relations in particular. And so Do the Right Thing, incredible film, and highly, highly recommend. This is a really great release from Criterion.
A beautiful Criterion.
And I just love this movie. I used to have the old standard edition before this came out. I think this came out like last year on Criterion. It was on Laserdisc, but I think, and now they just re-upped it because this is Spy number 97. So yeah, it's an earlier one, but it's an incredible film. So I had to bring this on up because it's definitely my favorite Spike Lee joint.
So that one's getting a 4K, isn't it? Like, is that one of the Criterions?
No, it's not one of the Criterions. It's getting a 4K, but it would be great if it did because it's a beautiful movie too. The other thing is the colors. I mean, you can see it on the release itself.
Yeah,
it is a colorful movie. And that's another thing is like the 80s were very colorful, and I just I want to say thank you for jumping on talking about the 80s.
Thank you for having me, and I love talking movies, love talking the 80s. So you brought up that the 80s, kind of like with every decade, there was not great times in the 80s, but I really feel like 80s overall was just so much fun. And if we're talking music, if we're talking clothes, nostalgic stuff, movies, I love the 80s. So
as do I, and I'm glad we were able to talk about all of our favorite movies. But for everyone watching this, what are some of your favorite movies from the 1980s? I'm sure we didn't cover every one of them because there's so much to cover, right? But I hope you enjoyed our 5 choices. Those are our the ones that we wanted to talk about the most, but obviously we talked about more than that, but that's totally fine. We love this decade, and so we want to talk about a lot of these releases. So let us know in the comment section down below. We're going to definitely be interacting with you there. We want to hear more about that. So Justin, do you have any final things to say to the people watching?
Just thank you for watching, and Nathan, thank you for having me on, and it was a pleasure talking movies with you, talking 80s. Anybody out there, leave comments down below. If you're a Howard the Duck fan, go ahead. I'm Howard the Duck fan. I liked it.
We all can be that way.
Yeah, leave comments down below. Whatever 80s movies you love, let's chat 80s. Let's talk about them. And so the 80s for me, it puts a smile on my face when I think about the 80s. So.
As do I. Where can everyone find you?
I am on YouTube, so Rhine1988. I, like many in this community, I talk physical media. I talk movies. It's the October season, so I'm talking some horror movie Blu-rays, 4Ks coming out, talking horror movies in general, spooky films. And then I'm on Instagram, so you can follow me. That's Rhine_1988. And again, on there, talking movies and physical media.
Well, I will be putting those for everyone in the link down below, so you can definitely check out Justin down there. And I just want to say once again, thank you for joining with me today. This was a super fun adventure in all things 80s, and I highly recommend everyone to check out his channel. It's a blast, and he's got a lot of great content. And if you've seen him before, I'm sure he's been on the channel before, and there's going to be more to come, so don't worry.
Thank you, my friend, and thank you for having me on once again, talking movies and talking 80s. So it was a pleasure.
Well, I appreciate you. So everyone who's watching this, I want to say thank you so much for checking this video out. I know it was a long one, but I'm sure it was a lot of fun, and I hope you wrote down some things and got some things to think about. So I hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.